First of all, thank you, John, for joining me. I know that your schedule is extremely tight, and finally, I got you on the AMA session, and it's one of the good ones. All of them are great, but this one is one of the very important ones because it's focused on the community contributions and the bounty program. And yeah, first of all, I would like to ask you to say a few words about yourself and how did you got into the project itself?
Sure. So I've been working a long time. We won't go into just quite how long, but long enough that I've seen all of the internet bubble and the mobile revolution and everything firsthand. So it's been a really interesting career. I've spent most of my time actually working at very large companies. I spent 13 years at Microsoft, 8 years at eBay. I started with Adobe Systems, got to work on Adobe Photoshop. I've got to work on big projects with a lot of impact. It's been really interesting, and I've learned all kinds of things operational. I've done a lot of work on automation, test automation, test quality, but also work on architecture and designing systems that are predictable and are going to scale well. I got a chance to work on experimentation when I was at DoorDash. So I've had a real variety. I kind of worked at almost every part of the software development process during the years I've been working, which gives me, I think, a unique view as to the things that go wrong in software, which is really quite a lot. So I spend a lot of my time thinking, both in Gonka and in just about every other piece of software, what can go wrong and how can we prevent it from going wrong? And obviously, with a blockchain application, the number of things that can go wrong has gone way up. So this has been a whole new thing for me to learn. Like, and you can't just re-roll and you can't just roll back. It's a much more complicated situation. So it's been really interesting. I ended up this. So I was looking for work in early 2023. Yeah, I was 2023, late 2022, 2023. A lot of activity, a lot of interviews, a couple of offers, and I got the offer from Product Science and from the Liebermans. And ultimately, what led me to pick them was I found the Liebermans a really fascinating group of people. Just I'd read about them. I'd read about some of the things they'd done. I talked with David quite a bit before, before accepting, and I just found them really fascinating, like very idealistic, very visionary, and I had never had a chance to work with leadership like that. So ultimately, that was what led me to pick product science about 3 years ago. When our first product was not working the way we wanted it to, we went and we tried this new direction going into the blockchain. And it was a surprise to me, but you know what? I was excited. And as we've gone down this path, I've become, just increasingly excited and increasingly motivated at what we're trying to do here. I presented on this at Korean Blockchain Week. I got a chance to talk about what this meant to me. We've seen so much centralization and so much control of our, frankly, daily lives and psychology and all kinds of things controlled by these large companies that are controlling everything and setting the rules and changing things on us without our permission and doing all this work. And here we are basically trying to fight that. We're trying to say, you know what, let's make AI something different. Let's make AI something that they don't control. And I mean, I couldn't ask for a more, whenever I tell people what I do, I get really excited because it's like, this is the first time I've been able to work on something I'm truly bought into. And that's been a great privilege. Plus, of course, as an engineer, I just find the whole field fascinating. I've really enjoyed the work here.
Well, I will be absolutely honest. I heard, first of all, rehearsal of yours of the presentation for the Korea Blockchain Week last year. And that's something that inspired me extremely because last time the logos of Microsoft, Adobe behind your back, they were not blurred and I was able to clearly see them. Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. And I need to say that for me, the opinion of the person that have seen it all and ended up here is always extremely valuable. Should we jump to the questions?
Got questions? Yeah. So ask me
Uh,
anything.
I would like to start from the fact that you mentioned to me previously that you would like to show some live demo of what you have prepared recently. And that is in a very big conjunction with the necessity for the community contribution and generally the bounty program.
Yes.
If you could be able to, thank you.
Sure. Let me real quick lost my lights here. One second. Let me go ahead and share. Uh, where's there we go. We should have run this before. This has been, how do I'm not, we usually don't work in,
You
we
should be
usually don't
able
run,
to share your screen.
yeah, we usually don't run in Zoom. So I don't think I have to make sure, see, there's the problem. I haven't given it permissions to share. Lovely. I'll be right back. I have to quit and reopen. There we go. All right. All right. Can you see the AI reviewer okay now?
Yes, but it would be great if you would also turn on your own video. I think that it's also possible.
Ah, yeah. Let me,
There we
there
go.
we go.
Perfect. Thank
There
you.
we go. Excellent. Okay. So, yeah, let me just talk about the problem we have, right? We have a lot of contributors plus our own work we're doing internally. We have, it's a complicated project. People are working on the different components. We have three major components with the blockchain, the decentralized API, and the ML nodes. We have things written in Rust, things written in Python, things written in Go, things written in Kotlin. It's a big, complicated project with a lot of pieces, and getting it wrong, as I said, super big problem. So largely, what I have seen is we cannot keep up with it. A lot of the code is also AI produced. A lot of the code is, written partly or maybe entirely. We don't know. This is external contributors. So there's a lot of code coming in and it's faster than we can review. So out of just a pure defense of my sanity, I wrote a tool. That's usually what I do. That's kind of how I've made a career out of things. Is when you're overwhelmed, you write software to help you out. That's the software engineering solution. So the key problem, we were using some AI review tools. We were using some AI review tools, and they weren't producing the results that really could help us. They weren't catching some of the more important things, particularly like very specific blockchain things. We couldn't guide it on specific design decisions that we had. Like the GitHub Copilot is good, but it's fairly generic, it's fairly general, and it takes this very global approach. It goes in and analyzes your entire code base and tries to find fairly generic things. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. So you're losing consistency. My insight was that what we wanted was much more focused reviewers, much more just like you would bring in an expert. You would say, hey, you're an expert on blockchain security. How about you take a look at this and you look at these relevant files? Or you're an expert on, HTTP security or performance in Go. These kinds of things, these are the people, if ideally, if we had a whole host or a large company like I've worked at, right, we would have experts in these and they could review each of these. So the goal of the reviewer is to, instead of viewing a AI code review as a big blob of information that you feed into even a really good model, instead you view it as an orchestration problem. So that we're going to take a large PR, we're going to break it into relevant chunks, and we're going to have personas that are specifically focused on solving one particular problem, look at those chunks alone and produce results so that we can understand them. That was really the vision that I had behind this. It made a lot of sense in the context of Gonka. So what I created was the AI reviewer. It is now public on our, Gonka AI/AI Reviewer on GitHub. It is just released. You can read through the documentation. This is the README file. It's largely just a CLI tool. It will require, a few things like having the GitHub CLI tool in order to be able to access GitHub and compare the notes. Its primary function that I've been using for it is to review individual PRs. So you feed it in a PR number, it gets the diff, it gets additional context, and it feeds it into each of the personas and then produces a result. To describe the whole flow, well, let me show you some of the personas that we have for GitHub, for Gonka. So we have actually quite a lot of personas. So we see here we've got ones about the bridge, we've got ones about the build files, ones about the Kotlin code that we have, the logging framework, etc. Let me show you just one, like the most important one, for instance, is our consensus. So this is a persona. The persona starts with an ID that identifies the persona. A model category. I'll talk more about this, but that's how we decide what model we're going to use when we run this persona. And then filters, lots of filters. This is just a sampling of the filters that we have. Says, hey, I'm going to view all of the Go files. If you change a Go file inside of the inference chain, we should feed it into the consensus. So that's how we narrow our scope, right? We say we're not going to worry about test code. We're not going to worry about the decentralized API. We're going to worry about consensus code. When any change touches the consensus code, we're going to run this persona with all of those changes annotated with additional information, which I'll discuss in a minute. And then it's going to follow the instructions that we have here in the MD file, producing issues as appropriate. So you can see here, this is all about the consensus issues. Obviously, map iterations, floating point, panics, determinism, anything that can broadly impact determinism in the blockchain, which of course, that's one of the big things that has bitten us, and we're not going to let it bite us again. And this is one of our tools for doing that. This one gets the best code model category, which means it gets a more expensive model because it's that important, right? But let's look at another one. Another one is the logging. So the logging, this is a little more generic. It's just basically saying, hey, everybody should use the same logging pattern. But here we use a slightly lesser model category. It's not as important. We impact all of the different logging files. We make sure that they use the right, we want everybody to use the same standard logging methods across the product because that helps us understand the logs. It's an example of one you can just throw in there. We even have really, really focused one. Like this one here is something that keeps us from accidentally breaking some of our integration tests and basically make sure that our test artifacts match the production artifacts, the params.proto. So if we change our governance parameters, we have to change them in the Kotlin file here. And very simple, very, very straightforward, but very, very focused. So that's the design goal here, is to have these. And you can see we have about, I think it's about 20 now, 20 different personas that we can run. Worth mentioning, there are two sort of specialty personas. There's the pre-personas. So we have one that's called change complexity. This runs before all the others, and it explains the overall structure of the product. It takes a look at, estimates the complexity of each file. How much is changed in each file, and how complex is this? And this informs all the other personas, like, hey, if something changes in this file, it's a really complex thing and you want to think about it more. You want to spend more time on it. So it's a multi-stage. And the last thing we have is, so that feeds into all of the other personas. The last thing we have is what I call post explainers. And these run at the end of the review. They can take into account all the things that the reviews have found, and they give my favorite one is the review guide. So this is mostly for the consumption of the of humans after the fact. So we have here, this is a review guide. It takes a look at the whole breadth of all of the changes and comes up with a plan for how to manually review this PR. It comes up with a plan that says, hey, these are the complex points. These are the risky parts. This is how long it's probably going to take. This group of files have this change, and this group of files have this change. and gives you general guidance about how best to review this PR as a manual reviewer. So this is often where I'll start. I'll start when I'm reviewing a PR. I will start by running, of course, and looking at any of the major issues. And then I will take a look at the review guide and make sure that I've looked through each of the components and thought about the things that it's called out. My favorite of these post explainers is the skeptic. Um, the skeptic basically, I've programmed it to say no. Its job is to say, no, this is a bad idea. Don't check this in. What is wrong with you? Um, it's it usually almost always says no. It's kind of obliging, and sometimes I override it. But oftentimes it has come up with some really good points, like, "Hey, we don't have any proof that this is a performance issue. Should we be preemptively fixing performance issues we don't have evidence? Can you provide evidence?" It will. All of these do take a look at the PR description. So, to our contributors, I want to say the PR description is really important. It's really important, a component of the review. It's a really important communication mechanism, not only for, of course, the human reviewers involved, but also for all the agents involved. Each one of them gets the PR description and will take that into account. So if you have a good reason, you've run tests, you've got data, provide that in the PR description so you can get both better results and get past the skeptic. The skeptic might actually give you a pass on things, but if you don't say it, it'll say, "Hey, you have no proof of this. I'm going to reject this. I'm going to reject this PR." Let me show you a bit of the results about how this looks once we're done. So let's go to let's see, a recent run. So you can see I've been running it a lot. These are the results, right? So each one here, each is a PR number, and the results are in the PR. And we store, this is actually really, really valuable. So if we look at 888, right, there's the date. This is the date of the run. Some of these I have many runs. Each persona gets its own directory. And inside of the directory, so you will see up to three things. Findings.json is an extracted version of all the issues that it found. One thing to note is that the issues get rolled up. They get extracted out by another agent that extracts specific issues, and then they get merged. So that if multiple personas find the same issue, we don't see multiple issues. We just see the same issue summarized with multiple references to different personas. Really, really useful there. So what we can see here is both the raw output. So you can see here, it found something where it didn't like how we're computing the calculation. And it describes the problem in detail here and describes a potential fix, summarizes all of it. This is very useful by itself. We also get, this is really, really useful. This is the prompt that was given to the persona. So this is the whole everything that was fed into an inference. So we can see here this is the kind of thing that the tool is preparing, right? So we'll talk about primers in a minute, but it gives you a lot of context. It gives you the PR metadata, the list of changed files. Of course, it gives the entire diff, and then the instructions, sort of the fundamental instructions about what it's trying to do. What you can do is you can take this entire prompt, copy it, and paste it into your favorite AI of choice, right? You can paste this into Claude Code. You can paste it into, anything else. Then you can see the responses that it comes up with, and you can have a conversation with the AI about why it thinks that. Or you can say, well, did you consider this? Like, if you don't think it's valid, one of the things I will do is I will grab the prompt here. I will paste it into an AI, and I will say, what about this consideration? And if it's not convinced, or if it comes up with it's a chance to have a dialogue with the AI reviewer. This is really valuable. Oftentimes you can use that to refine your persona so that it does or doesn't produce an issue that you thought it should have. But this is a really important aspect of being able to make this. I'd like to, theoretically, you could also have the response, right? So you've got the prompt MD and you've got the raw MD, which is the response that initially have. So I haven't set this up, but you could, in theory, just sort of continue the conversation from the response that it already found and refine it from there. But that's for another day.
May I quickly
So
ask
let's,
you, how much time does it take to apply all of the personas to the use case? For example,
well,
just to run all of them together.
yeah, it depends on the size, very, very heavily on the size of the PR. So I've seen it from a few minutes, like a minute, minute and a half, to I've seen one run 10 minutes. It took 10 minutes for it to run all the personas. And it's running them in parallel too. The running, I think you can set the concurrency level. I've got it set to 5. So the concurrency level, it'll run 5 personas at a time. And even then it can take up to 10 minutes. The final report, which is really where the sort of rubber hits the road, this is often where you want to start when you after you've run the AI reviewer. It will show us the base commit, the PR. It'll summarize the overall. And here we have one, three, four categories, right? We have must fix issues, which these are things that could cause serious problems on the network. Major issues, things that we want to almost certainly want to fix, things that we review carefully, things that might be an issue and it's not so sure about, and then consider these are things more like style, maybe minor performance, test mechanics very often, like you didn't write the tests correctly, or you could use a table-driven test instead of a standard test. These are more advisory. I still think they're often very important and informative, and on most PRs, I will still take a look at them and see if they're real issues. Then we see the explanation. So here's the review guide I mentioned, right? So here's a review guide for this PR. It gives you a gist of the changes, the critical areas, the complicated, risky parts, the how the files are grouped, what to look out for. There's the effort estimator. This one almost always estimates way too high. I have to try and tweak it, but its goal is to basically give us an idea of how long it would take to review this as a human. So how complicated is this PR? I've had one where it says, "Hey,
Just to
clear your
make yourself feel
calendar."
bad.
Yeah, it's like clear your calendar for the next week because this one's a big one. I've had it say that. Uh, that's usually a sign that our PR is probably a bit too big. It's an interesting metric in any event. Here's one where it gives you a description of the PR. Sort of, this is our standard. I know we're still working on this, but we're trying to build a template here. I don't know if we've announced this. We're trying to build a template where you answer these questions for each PR. This is actually worth mentioning. It's an entirely separate point for our contributors. Like, these are the questions that we really want to have an answer to. I know a lot of PR descriptions are like a checklist and did you do this and did you do that? I find that kind of stuff pretty boring. Like, of course, we're going to do that. That's what GitHub Actions for. That's what checks are for. We've got a lot of things like that. I don't. I want to get to the stuff that only a human can give me, right? Or at least a well-informed AI. So the question is, what problem does this PR solve? Right? A PR has to solve a problem. There's not much point to it. How do you know it's a real problem, right? Well, we say this is a problem, but well, maybe you just think it's a problem. Very often we fix problems that we think are going to be there, but we don't have good reasoning or thinking about or evidence why we think this is going to be a problem. You describe how this PR solves that problem. You describe the risks that solving this problem and all of these code changes introduce and what might mitigate them. And then finally, how do you know you actually fixed it? Right? It's like, okay, great. You theorized that you fixed the problem. How do you know you actually fixed this problem? So this is designed to sort of guide everybody's thinking about what the purpose of a PR is and why we're trying to why we're proposing a code change. Uh, the Here's the skeptic. Look, this one would actually proceed with caution. That's about as jubilant as it gets. It's like, yeah, okay, I guess we'll go ahead. But it'll even then, even when it says you can proceed with caution, it'll give you reasons about, uh, like it caught one recently on one of our PRs that we need to discuss actually, where we're allowing the claim rewards to go to um, a different person or a different account, right? So you could submit a claim rewards and you can say, okay, instead of paying the account, go ahead and pay this other account, the reward coin. And it seemed like a solid PR. And then the skeptic came out and said, well, yeah, but your hotkeys now can assign money instead of your cold keys. And I was like, I had not thought of that. That's exactly the kind of thing that the sort of big picture reviewers that we can have in this system that are hard to have in the others, right? Very often they get focused on the minutiae and the exact implementation, but sometimes we want a reviewer also to be thinking about the big picture, which is sort of the skeptic's job. And sure enough, I think that's actually a big issue we need to face. If the hotkey can go ahead and reassign your rewards when you're claiming, that's a big security problem. So we need to rethink about how we're going to approach that issue. The final bits here are the stats. So you can see we keep detailed stats. One of the goals of this is to be able to run these really good code reviews without costing an arm and a leg. Now, some of our are still costing quite a bit, but we can see here this is tracking all of our tokens and all of the cost, and it comes up with a total estimated cost. It also says, you were asking about how long it takes to run, right? It gives us the total wall time that it took to run this review, including all of the pre-explainers and the aggregators and the final reviewers and everything. It shows us exactly how much time we're spending on all of our different components here. So this is a really useful sort of summary of it all. Uh, let's see. To talk about one more thing. So you probably saw in the raw the primers. Now, the primers are similar. The idea here is that we want to add extra context for the AI to know how a component is supposed to work. Or let's say if we go to, right, so here is a primer on our parameters. So now in AI Reviewer, we can provide additional context. Hey, these parameters are controlled by blockchain. They have to be voted on by a majority. So this informs its ability to assess risk, for instance, right? So it says, well, hey, if it didn't know the parameters had to be voted on, it might assume that setting something as a parameter is a major security problem. But this is trying to give it the context it needs to make the right decisions. And so we have some sort of overview. Uh, this one just gives an overview of what the decentralized API component does, so that anything reviewing that understands the context of what this, and these can be very specific. You can have a primer for a specific file that says, hey, we designed this to do this. We need to look out for these things. And that will then be sent into every persona that reviews that file. My goal here is to sort of build up what I would call like operative or executable documentation. One of the problems that I've seen over my career is that, and I think almost anybody who's done software for long knows this, if you documentation dies, it dies. It gets stale. Nobody updates it. Nobody cares about it. Nobody, you're busy. You're trying to produce code. You don't also have time to produce documentation. This is different. This is actionable documentation. And updating it gets you a value that you don't get from just updating documentation. It gets you more informed AI as it comes in and it tells you, this works or this doesn't work. And one of the ones I actually the persona I meant to write, I didn't get a chance to, is effectively do the primers need to be updated with this code change? Right. So for any code change, let's make sure that we update the primers and make sure that the documentation stays current. So that in a code review, it would say, hey, you need to update the primer because you changed the actual way this part of this functions. And that's another, thing that we just never had an ability before AI. Keeping documentation up to date, or even just knowing we aren't keeping it up to date, was something that would fall by the wayside, and that's why it becomes useless. The goal here is we can actually keep this as useful operative documentation that we keep up to date because we have to. Otherwise, we'll start failing our code reviews. The one final thing worth mentioning was this is still pretty experimental. These are what I call waivers. Essentially, when I can't get a persona to stop harping on a particular problem, I introduce a waiver. So it kept on saying that get signers, is uh, get signers was deprecated in the Cosmos SDK in I think 50, 0.50. In any event, we don't need to worry about overriding get signers because it's no longer how they extract signers. Instead, they use a proto buff option. You can see that we actually explain it right here in the waiver. What happens there is if if a persona finds an issue and the place it found the issue matches these filters, the path filters, we have another run where we run this instructions along with the issue that was found. And if it matches the waiver, it doesn't surface the issue anymore. This is useful for things like when we're trying, I use this for when we were introducing the new subnet because we needed to be able to review, just make sure that it wasn't going to break the chain and review the rest of it later. I introduced this temporarily. You can see only just for the one and for only for that one filter, only for that one branch that we were reviewing. We did basically said, let's waive those for now, those issues for now, and focus in on the ones that are going to cause problems for the chain. And then we'll get to the next ones later. So that's an example of a waiver. Uh, I guess the one thing left to cover is the config.yaml. And this is actually important because this gets operational. Now, I I want to plead with this is such an opportunity for us to go faster as a community. If we have everybody running the AI reviewer before they submit PRs or just after they submit their own PR, they run it on their own code, they take it into account. Heck, if you want to get fancy, guys, I know somebody's out there is going to do it where they have a loop where the AI reviewer runs and feeds it into their agent and then it tries to fix it and then the AI review. Somebody's going to have a loop like that. Tell me how it goes. I'll be really interested in hearing about that experiment. Right? Like just have the AI go in a constant loop until the other AI is happy. I feel badly, but maybe I'm wrong. One, yeah. So this defines the models that we have. So the cheap model, the balanced model, the fastest good model, the best code model, and then the frontier best. This is like I don't actually use this in any of Gonka's current code, but this is essentially like this is the most expensive, best product, best version of the model that we have available. Right now, we're just using, I've been running it with Gemini, largely because we have an account that, I don't need to worry about paying or expensing. So I can just throw a lot of Gemini at it and not worry about the cost. Well, I mean, obviously I'm worried about the cost, but you can see that you define the models, the providers, the max number of tokens, and then the input price per million. This is important. That's how it calculates the price estimate that it gives you at the end. So you can change these. When you're running it, maybe you want to run it with Claude. So you can change these to the provider would be Anthropic. The model would be whatever model you wanted to use. There, you still have to provide your own token. So we don't have, obviously, we can't just like say, hey, here's a token everybody can use. We can't do that. But you do need to provide your own token to run it, but it should run with just about any, I think I have implementations for OpenAI, Anthropic, and Gemini. Now, the dream is to have a provider be Gonka. We're working hard on that. This is one of my priorities. It's one of my ways I know we've won, is that we use Gonka to review Gonka. That's going to be a really exciting day. So that we have this running on our own network, reviewing the code for our network. I'm pretty sure we're close to that, and I'm really I will make some post about it when I do it because I'll be that excited.
May I
Uh,
ask you, do you think that it's possible one day to see this tool being a part of necessary onboarding for any PR, adding from the side of the third-party contributions, that they would not be able to actually do that without doing this and running the code through especially the skeptical persona, because I think it's extremely helpful.
yeah, I we have to figure out some of the details, right? The question of cost and which models to run it on. Obviously, I would love to put this into a GitHub action and have it run on every. I'd also like to have it insert comments the way that the others do. It's not quite there yet to be able to do that. We still have, I still think there's a lot of human element involved in looking at these results and making decisions. I still have to look at these. I wouldn't just trust it to shove all the findings in there. It's still often wrong. So we still need to be monitoring. We still need to be adding or maybe improving some of our personas, adding more appropriate context or primers as we go, maybe adding waivers to reduce noise. The signal to noise ratio is not where I would like it to be, to where we add that. So that's the first problem to solve on having it as a required step. And the second is cost and how we're going to run the tokens. But obviously, once we get it to be running on Gonka, I think we could all be happy with setting aside some of the community pool, for instance, to provide tons of Gonka just for reviewing Gonka. And we could probably figure that out. I don't know. I'm not making any promises. I think once we get it running on Gonka in a reliable way, then yeah, making it part of basically every pull request would be really exciting. Until then, just know that I will be running it on almost every pull request that people submit. I really hope that our contributors will start running it on theirs and taking care of those issues before I have to bring them up. That'll save us all a whole bunch of time and make me much happier and allow us to go faster, which I think is really important. Allow us to get to more of these issues. I know you guys have so many issues that a lot of you found, and it's been really impressive to see such a huge effort from so many people. I've never worked on, something like this. It's almost like working on a large project at a large company, and we're all the company. So it's kind of exciting, but it's also fairly overwhelming. So I'm hoping, again, I built this out of self-defense. Like, I can't possibly keep up with all this. I'm not catching all the things. Let's do this. So I really hope everybody embraces this. I would love to see pull requests to the AI Reviewer. It is open source. If you have new features that you want to put in, if you have new personas for Gonka, or fixes to personas to Gonka, or new primers, that would be fantastic. One of the things you can do, I didn't mention, is primers can actually be inside the code itself. So the AI reviewer will scan the entire code base that it's reviewing for MD files with the correct front matter, specifying that this is an AI reviewer component. So if you stick a primer or an MD file with the correct front matter inside of a folder that you're working on that explains a component that you're working on in more detail, that will be included in the AI review automatically. So this is a chance to build up this, what I call operative documentation, where we have documentation that informs everybody about how this works. And ultimately, I also view this, and I would recommend our contributors to take a look through the personas, right? Because that represents a lot of what I'm thinking, and what I'm thinking is important. Maybe you haven't thought about some of them. Maybe by looking at the personas, maybe you can find a way to feed the personas into the agents that are writing the code so that they'll write better code, right? The number of possibilities in the AI era is really it's scary sometimes, but mostly very exciting. I would love to see, yes, feed the personas into your agents so that they make the right choices the first time. That's a great mechanism that I have not experimented with, but I'm sure some of you all in our community will find some ways to experiment with that. I'd love to see how that goes. Uh,
Well, you opened the path. I think that that's the most important thing, and I'm sure that the crowd will flow eventually. And yeah, I think that that's, as you mentioned, will speed up the process of the PR implementation and also will increase the quality of it. And even though human fact checkers need to exist, I think that it will still save a lot of times from all sides. I wanted to just kind of finish the session with some questions that came up to my mind based on the fact that you're the person who is reviewing quite a lot of PRs coming from the community itself. So for me, it would be very interesting to understand what was the single most interesting or impactful contribution as from the community member, or the one that you find peculiar or unexpected that you can think of so far.
oof,
What
man,
shocked you in the GitHub?
it's hard. I've looked at so many, right? I've looked at so many. It's like, okay, goodness, I can't remember. I some of the subtle little I think OK came out with a couple that were just really um like hard to find. The ones I love are the ones where you went in and you found this edge case where if this happens and this happens in the state, then we could have a consensus failure or we could have somebody stealing money. Those are always my favorite. Because those are both more important and they're really hard to find. They show like a deep level of understanding that some of it's been pretty stunning. Nothing specific comes to mind, but some of the things that, around how we're handling payments, or some of the things around how we're calculating. Somebody could inject this negative value over here, and that's going to cause the whole chain to collapse. Right. Obviously, those are the most exciting. And, obviously I've spent a lot of time trying to find and trying to think of those. But the fact of the matter is, humans, it's one of the reasons I wrote the AI reviewer also is that I'm only human in my attention, particularly with a big PR, right? I may miss something. I get tired or I get distracted, or AI does not get tired or distracted. It has its
I
limitations, but that's not one of them.
I can say that it would. I would say that it would be like white hacking, conscious disclosure kind of events where you understand that something was extremely overlooked as a critical mistake and it was mitigated by someone's passionate heart. I can understand why. Honestly, this is really a lot of love from the community to be able to get stuff like this. Because there's a lot of misinformation or generally misconceptions around how to run the node or what would be the best way to run the node, or like how some people are saying that you cannot do it anymore from having a microwave at home with a GPU card. It needs to be something powerful. Um, what would you would say would be the biggest misconception at the current stage of the Gonka development to run a node as a host? Because I think that there might be some recurrent questions or some recurrent misconceptions coming when the person is trying to connect to the network, and then there is some kind of bottleneck, which is usually something that needs to be described, expressed, or guided through.
Well, I'm not sure. What like generally when I hear that, what I would say is like there is the test net, and I think we need a lot more involvement in the test net. Like if you want to run, I always think of this from a developer perspective, of course, not from a miner perspective so much. Um, but working with the test net is something you could do before you wanted to launch something on the main net, right? Is go ahead and take some cheap hardware because the hardware requirements are not the same on the test net. Take some cheap hardware, figure out how to join the test net, iron that out, make that smooth, do it with a couple of nodes, and now you'll be able to do it on the mainnet a lot easier. And when you bring the bigger hardware that you're intending to mine, you'll be able to do that. Plus, if you're working on it from a development perspective, much better to work with the testnet, and then you can genuinely try to, destroy it or hack it or what without causing any disruptions on the mainnet.
Fair enough. People use the sandbox first. And I would say that I would like to finish with one, my favorite question actually. From the top of your head, do you remember what was the biggest paid bounty so far as a reward?
It was one of those critical failures. I again, I don't remember the details. They all muddle together, but it was something where somebody could steal out of the escrow fund. I'm pretty sure that was one of our highest paid, where somebody, if they sent in like a negative claim or a negative, I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was an overflow, right? It was a uint. You use uints, and then you get a negative number, and it becomes a large number. And if you did that exactly right and positioned it exactly, you could actually get a negative. Like when you got a refund, you got a negative refund, right? So you actually got a credit instead, and that the code had let that through. There was just a couple of oversights there where we weren't handling overflows correctly, and someone was able to see that and propose a fix. And yeah, that I believe was our biggest bounty so far.
Heard from some developers that it was bigger than their salary. So, but like, great motivation to join the bounty program. That's what I'm saying for everyone. Are there any questions from the audience? I think that we had a very nice and consistent session, but if anyone has anything to add, I would be very happy to address the questions. Let's see. We had a pretty consistent crowd throughout the whole session. And all right, nonetheless, in any case, I just want to mention again that the session itself will be shortly available on Discord, and you will be able to find it in the library section. And bounty program, the same as how to apply to it, are available on the Discord server as well. And you're all encouraged to join it, especially right now when you have this absolutely fabulous tool from John that is allowing you to save a lot of your time, nerves. And I thought that the internal critic voice is like everyone has it in their own head, but it's very good to have it as an AI agent as well. Oh, wow. And we have one. Is it possible to help somehow if I have a good subscription but not a coder myself? Um, Non-technical bounties and ability to join the dialogue will be shortly discussed and published on the Discord server. And the non-technical session that will be focusing the infrastructural projects that we find extremely valuable for the development of Gonka will happen very soon. Stay tuned, and the announcement will happen in our event section. All right. I cannot explain to you how grateful I am, John, that you found time to join us. The session was amazing. And yet again, if there will be any questions, you're always welcome to fill them on our Discord server. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.